Well, here's where it comes to a very interesting line of thinking, because there are a lot of people that, at the slightest mention of a person's faith in Christianity, start getting turned off and start getting upset that it's brought up. But we're getting into a question here now and people are missing the answer, because when you read the Constitution, there are many references to natural law, nature's law. And it's not even necessarily saying that nature's law is Christianity, and Christianity is really acceptable nature's law. They're referring to nature's law. Okay, you want to interpret it differently, it doesn't matter. The premise of the Constitution was that nature's law supersedes the law of man, is greater than the law of man. So these laws that are being passed against us, they are not greater than nature's law. But when you have country and a culture that people are meant to, in very many ways, feel like they're supposed to be very hush-hush about their personal beliefs, it's almost unspoken social taboo. And as a result of that, we're losing our understanding of natural law and how natural law will always triumph over the law of man, the law of tyrants abusing their power.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's hard to argue with, and we know the Magna Carta was put in place before the Constitution, but more and more it's difficult to even speak to these enforcers. The police would rather tase you than talk to you nowadays, it seems like. But all right, let's just back up and look at some of the issues now. As you probably know, a lot of people are starting to speculate about the financial collapse in 2008 and whether it was necessary, whether it was engineered. We know Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac had a lot to do with it. And I mean, it just looks like a lot of people were given money to buy houses with the understanding that they couldn't pay it back. I mean, do you think that there are economic policies, major federal economic policies in need of reform? Or, I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, yeah, there have been a lot of things that our government has done to meddle with markets and the economy that have been just disastrous, and they've abandoned some tried and true protections that were built in after or as a result of the stock market crash that led to the Great Depression. There was a Glass-Steagall Act which prevented investment banks and commercial banks from operating under the same business. And the reason that just that premise alone is important, and even, I would like it, just that premise pretty much back. I don't necessarily think every word of the bill has to, be revitalized, because I'm sure as most bills, there was some things in there that were wrong as well. But what happened was there were a lot of subprime mortgages given out, as you said, to people that could never hope to pay them. There were also, most of them were adjustable rate mortgages, meaning that should economic conditions change, that at one point or another your rate is likely to go up, and we're really not sure how much, but it just might go up. So a lot of people that could have afforded their mortgage, as the adjustable rate went up and more people defaulted, it was snowballed upwards. So more and more people that could have perhaps paid if the economy didn't get so harsh condition-wise so fast, were unable to pay due to these subprime mortgages. And what happened was the investment banks bundled up these subprime mortgages and leveraged them, meaning almost like fractional reserve banking. Well, exactly like fractional reserve banking. For every dollar the bank holds, they're lending out 10 and collecting interest on it. So leverage on these bonds, say, so if they had $1 million worth of debt in the bond, they would leverage out to $10 million worth of debt. In some cases, I believe a lot more, even. And what would happen is they would bring it from the investment bank that put the bonds together to the commercial bank, and because they were married in the same business, they would tell the commercial bank, these are our AAA-rated subprime mortgage bonds. And the people at the commercial end said, okay, here's our commercial stamp of approval for your junk bonds that now are AAA-rated. So have fun, spreading this out to the investing public of the whole world, which they did, and quite a lot of money was made. And then, once things turned around, the markets turned against, all of the shenanigans and started to come back to reality, everybody realized that these AAA bonds they had were really junk bonds.
Right.
So
Okay.
It was a scam. And
Yeah.
they paid for this.
When we see this kind of thing happening, we've seen Obama, create so many different czars. I mean, there's a czar for everything. There's an internet czar. And, people kind of joke around, well, what we really need is a czar for common sense. I mean, I guess that would kind of be something that would be difficult for any normal person to see that it was going on. But do you think that that whole scandal, that whole, bit of corruption right there, should that have been visible to somebody as a former financial consultant? How did they get away with that for so long?
Well, actually, I'm a current financial consultant. I'm just on a hiatus for the campaign.
All right.
Once I win, I suppose I would probably bow out of the industry also. It would be a conflict of interest. But the reason these people are getting away with this is because we have a problem with big business and big government are working together against the people when this government was established to keep big business and big government working in collaboration against the people. And a lot of these problems have to do with the corporate personhood that's developing and becoming, more and more of a problem for the people is this premise of corporate personhood.
Okay, so would you reverse the corporate personhood status thing, or I mean, what would you do about that?
I think that it needs to be fine-tuned. I think that most of it is in the wrong direction. I think that there needs to be a degree of freedom, of course. I mean, I don't want to overregulate things, but corporate personhood in a sense of where you're seeing continually problems of corporations seeming to supersede the rights of the people. That's a problem. Our people aren't second-class citizens to the corporations. If anything, the corporations are second-class to the people. But we're supposed to have free market economy and just have businesses be able to operate reputably and generate wealth for themselves and their employees. That's fine. But when you have a corporation that's doing things that are human rights violations or against the law, and there's never any repercussions, or it's just a matter of throwing enough money at a team of lawyers to make things go away, that's a serious problem. And it's not an equal application of the law in many cases in regards to white-collar crime or corporate crime, as opposed to somebody maybe being harassed for being in possession of a controlled substance the government doesn't like. Or somebody that's potentially only hurting themselves winds up in jail, whereas you have these white-collar criminals damaging potentially millions of lives, tens of millions of lives financially with their irresponsible behavior, and their companies are all getting bailed out. It really is insane. I mean, it's almost like you couldn't make it up if you tried.
No, I think you're right about that. If somebody had written a book 10 years ago about the financial collapse, about the things that have occurred since then, nobody would have believed it. But we've watched it unfold, and we're watching, all these laws being passed. I mean, let's talk about the internet censorship, SOPA, CISPA, all this stuff, which is designed to basically, in my opinion, it's designed to squelch free speech. So while the corporations are told, well, you have all the rights of an individual, and thus you have free speech and can spend as much money as you want, advertise in any way you want, promote anybody or anything you want, the people are told you can't support a candidate within 90 days of an election. Now they're shutting us down on the internet, or at least scaring people to the point where a lot of them are, not speaking the way that they would choose to. I mean, when do these laws go too far?
Well, it feels like every day they go too far, because every day we're dealing with one of these laws that hasn't been repealed yet. It's a qualifying day, so every second of every day these laws are going too far. And it's a huge task to take on, trying to advocate for getting as many of them repealed as possible, or introducing new legislation that would overturn it. It's a huge obstacle. Somebody needs to step up to the plate and do it, and here I am doing it. And it's good that you brought up CISPA, because the incumbent in my race voted for CISPA. I wasn't very surprised seeing the rest of his voting record. But also what's interesting is my opponent in the Republican primary, he ran in 2010 as well and dropped out for the benefit of the candidate that got the nod. See, this is part of how the system works. It's not so much about who the best candidate is, but as whose perceived turn it is, who's done the most party favors. So, but at that point in time, when I was running as Constitution Party candidate, and my opponent now was in the Republican, possibly going to be in a Republican primary, he did have a website up, and of course I, reviewed it, because it makes sense to know where your opponents stand on the issues. And there was something in his website, I forget the precise wording, but it was clearly showing that he was advocating for some type of an internet security bill, internet control bill. Now, when you look at his 2012 website, it really doesn't say very much in regards to anything in regards to policy. He's gone from, standing for the wrong thing, mixed in with standing for some of the right things, possibly. He's gone from that to now, attempting to stand for nothing, denying that there's a primary, thinking he's just going to coast through this election, slamming on the incumbent. And, people don't want to hear a lot of complaining. They want to hear solutions. I mean, it's of course, I'm going to expose the problems with my opponents, but I'm going to provide solutions at the same time.
Right. Okay, now speaking about solutions, you brought up the fractional reserve banking. We know what a major problem it is. We know how they can control people using the interest or the usury in the fractional reserve banking. We know Ron Paul, for instance, supports a gold-backed currency. And there are others who question that, because, let's face it, we know who owns a lot of the gold. What are your thoughts on tying the dollar to a commodity?
Well, I think it would have to be possibly a basket of commodities, at least to start with, and then maybe we could start trimming that basket down, and/or a gold/silver based currency, because the logistics of us going strictly to gold, I don't think it's very feasible, but you would have to at the very least include silver. And part of the reason I say that is because we recently got caught sending phony gold bars over to China, where they were gold-plated gold bars, and I forget the name of the metal that was the core of the bar.
Was it tungsten?
I believe it was. So if that's the case, clearly we can't go on to a gold standard, at least not right away. I like the idea of just getting rid of all the capital gains taxes on gold, and you're recognizing it as legal tender, as a competing currency, which is something else that Ron Paul has also advocated for, is allowing for a competition of currencies. I have mixed feelings on that as well, but I think that we need some drastic measures, because we're in a mess, and business as usual, it's not working. And one of the things that I want to do to at least help the states out a bit and begin to cut the federal government off, I want to ban the federal government from taking state tax money. Because what happens now is the federal government takes all of the state tax money and will give possibly a small amount of it back, or a percentage of it back, with strings attached. So, okay, we're giving you this amount of money back, but you're going to have to put up new street signs that have a capital first letter and the rest of it lowercase, because the ones that are all capital aren't as easy for people to read. I mean, this is actually something that happened locally in my hometown in Farmingdale. You get all these new signs up, and somebody told me because the federal government told them to do it.
Right. Yeah, and I heard about they're changing the font for readability and stuff, and they use the media to promote this like it's a good thing, and they don't mention what it costs the taxpayers. But
and everybody has a GPS now anyway. Nobody looks at street signs anymore.
Right.
I'm exaggerating. People still use the street signs, but it's just another example of government waste.